guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here. Today I want to talk to you about Mythica, The Quest for Heroes, starring Kevin Sorbo and a whole bunch of other actors that I have never heard of before. And this DVD cover is a little bit misleading because Kevin Sorbo is in this movie for about 3 minutes and then you never see him again. So if you are a fan of Kevin Sorbo in Hercules TV show, which I was never a big fan of, or Cole the Conqueror, which I do have a guilty pleasure love for that movie, if you like Kevin Sorbo in those types of roles and then you see him on a DVD cover here and you think, hey, this is a fantasy story with Kevin Sorbo, this will be fun, you may want to rein in your excitement because he's only in this for, I'm not even kidding, about 3 minutes and then you don't see him again. This feels like somebody played a game of Dungeons and Dragons and then after that game was over, they went and turned that story into a screenplay and got the movie funded for about $5 at the Sci-Fi Channel. That's how bad this movie is. It's really not good. Anytime you hear people talking down on the fantasy genre and talking about how it's not a valid genre like some of the other genres of storytelling, this is the kind of story that they are thinking of when they say that fantasy is not worth the time of day. This really just feels like they went about making a Dungeons & Dragons game in the most by-the-numbers way possible. And looking at the extra features on this movie, there's not a whole lot of extra features, but one of the very first things they say in one of the featurettes is that this was inspired by role-playing games. And it's very obvious when you're watching the movie. The basic plot here is that Myrick is an aspiring sorceress who runs away from home, and then she sees this high priestess whose sister is missing, and the high priestess wants a group of adventurers to find her sister, and so Myrick goes and gets this knight who saved her life earlier in the movie, and this thief who tried to feel her up in the back of a wagon, and then they go and rescue the high priestess's sister. And there's this stone that has to get to a paladin. The stone is magic, and the paladin is important for some reason. None of that is ever explained, and they slap a big to be continued on this movie at the very end, and there are like 5 Mythica movies, so I guess this was meant to be the beginning of a longer franchise, but honestly, after watching this, I would not be devastated at all if someone went into my brain and just cut out every memory of this thing ever existing. Of course, then if they did that, and then I saw it again later on, I'd be like, hey, I want to watch that, because I really was interested in this. I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know if it was based on anything that pre-existed, but I was interested, and man, this movie really kicked me in the groin hard. This just feels so soulless. It feels like somebody on a board of directors said, okay, we want to make this movie. You have to have an aspiring sorceress. You have to have this guy who's kind of like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. He's big and tough and he's no nonsense. And then you have this guy and he's your thief because a Dungeons & Dragons game has to have a thief type archetype. Basically, every character in this doesn't feel so much like a character. They feel more like an archetype. And none of them are really explored in any way. Now, at least some of these characters do show up in some of the later Mythica movies. I was looking a few of them up, and some of them do show up in some of the later ones, so I guess it's possible that they do get explored and fleshed out a little bit more in some of those other movies, but unfortunately, that doesn't do me any good here, because in this movie, none of these characters feel like actual characters. Myrick, her entire shtick is that she has a limp, she has a clubfoot, and she wants to heal that. That's her only thing, and then she wants to learn magic. We don't know anything else about her. We got this guy who invents this little cast for her to wear, so it will be easier for her to travel. I don't know if that's her brother, if that's her boyfriend, or her platonic friend, because we don't know anything about this character. Then you have the high priestess who is not allowed to have sex, and then she has this unresolved sexual tension with the Aragorn type guy, and then that doesn't go anywhere. We don't really get to see her character progress any. She has a sister who is even less developed. This movie really just doesn't try at all, and that's disappointing because I went into this, I won't say with high expectations, but my expectations were higher than what they should have been. So anyway, this is really just one of the worst fantasy stories that I've watched in a very long time, and that's saying something because very recently I watched The Scorpion King 2, and I would have to say that was probably a better movie than this. So really, just let that sink in if you've seen The Scorpion King 2. So anyway, if you are a fan of fantasy stories, if you like something that's like, hey, we have a group of misfit characters and they don't really belong together, but they all have to work together. If you like those kinds of stories, stay away from this movie because this really gives that kind of story a bad name. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. This is just bad. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Mythica, the quest for heroes, or the quest of the heroes. I don't remember, and it's sitting right in front of me, and I don't even want to look. So anyway, I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later in the week with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.